All right, ladies and gents, welcome to the Brain Body Bliss podcast. You are here because you believe our brain and our health is the most valuable assets to have a blissful life. And this is a place where we discover how entrepreneurs and experts bring their body and their mind to its peak state every day. Now, today, we'll be talking about energy efficiency, how we can take better care of our energy and keep it high. Now, today, we'll be featuring a very special guest, Monique Lindner. Now, Monique, let me tell you about Monique. Okay, now Monique, as known as the Time Alchemist, is a holistic high-performance lifestyle designer and leadership coach, writer, TEDx speaker, and level 2 licensed stress and rescue scuba diving instructor, change maker, and an adventurous spirit on the autism spectrum. But little did you know, since she was young, she suffered from 2 chronic health challenges. Now, despite being in pain and the constant hospital visits and still studying in high school, Monique started taking jobs at a young age of 13 and then started her first own business at the age of 13. She attended university while working 2 jobs and running for her business and still successfully completed 2 universities degrees. But then, after 6 years of non-stop working 18 to 20 hours a day, Monique died of cardiac arrest and was clinically announced dead for 25 seconds. And she was only 19 years old, 19 years young actually. Now, death literally taught Monique an important life lesson, but it also gave her a second chance. With that second chance, she decided to follow her heart to travel and work around the world. And she moved to London to help organize a London Design Festival. Then, at 22 years old, she was hired by Siemens Enterprise to manage and train the team on mindset, team culture, and team performance. And by the age of 23, she got officially certified as a supervisor and coach. Later on, she was hired by Apple to help with their European online sales and support team, in which she had to hire, train, and lead 140 people who spoke 5 different languages. After years in IT, Monique changed industries and was hired by one of the most reputable social media agencies in Germany. So far, Monique has traveled solo to 45 plus countries, and from her travels and work, she never stopped learning about neuroscience and human behavior. Hence, in 2020, while in the middle of the first lockdown, Monique wrote her first book, The Time Method, and published it within 4 months. Now, Monique's big mission in life is to help you transform everything that is not serving you into a life business that lets you thrive. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the Nur Monique Lindner. Okay, thank you for being here, Monique.
Thank you so much, Saida. Well, that was a big introduction. You read my whole uncut bio, didn't you?
Yes, guilty as charged.
I love it. Also, may I just introduce Latte? Here's my dog, and I was out all day, so he decided to join us for the recording today. So he usually doesn't make sound, so don't worry.
Okay, no problem. I have 2 dogs myself.
Oh, did you hear that?
Yeah.
He has an opinion, but he doesn't say it.
Yeah. That's good, you know.
Good to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks for coming. You know, it's great to have you here. So, let's just start right off the bat. You know, since today is about energy efficiency and how we can take better care of our energy and keep it high. So, yes, I mean personally, I do. You know, I do have this issue when I feel like I don't have enough energy for the day, and especially like as entrepreneurs, we all here have multiple responsibilities and roles to play. So how do we keep our energy and efficiency high?
It's actually a really interesting question because it's so broad, it's so big, it's so interesting, right? The question is actually the first question we should ask ourselves: are we aware that our energy is not high? Because most people, most entrepreneurs especially, right? They're not aware that they're running on low energy. They aren't aware that they are running on a consistent maybe brain fog, that they have certain symptoms that are not normal. Like because in our society, we're told all the time, oh, it's normal that you're feeling exhausted. It's normal that you're taking longer for this task. It's normal that you're procrastinating. It's not normal, actually, you know?
Yeah.
It's not normal that we are feeling burned out, that we're feeling stressed all the time. This is not normal. And I think we just need to start with the question, like, where does our energy go? What is draining us so much so that we feel consistently low on energy? And I think a lot of people maybe describe it differently. They say, I feel tired, or like I'm sick of and tired of this thing, or I'm exhausted, or I used to say when I worked back in Germany and I had a full-time job, I used to say, like, I felt like a truck has hit me. Like these metaphors we say, right? Like, I think everyone realizes what it means. And even though you haven't had an accident, I hope so, what it means to feel like a truck has hit you. Because you probably feel like everything hurts in your body and you just feel so exhausted, you can't move, and like you can't really open your eyes. That's signs of burnout. That's not just stress anymore. That's signs of burnout. And so the question to begin is, where does our energy go? So before we can start with like, how do we keep it high? The question is, where does it go, right?
Yeah.
And that's really a big question. And to answer that question, everyone needs to look at their own lives, and everyone should take a assessment, really. And the assessment would be about, what do you do on a daily basis? Whom are you doing things with? Where do you go? And how do you feel afterward? And it's really like, it can have often an immediate effect on people. But the question is really like, how do you feel? Not necessarily emotionally only, like mentally, spiritually, physically. How do you feel after you did a certain task? You met with a certain person. You ate certain foods. You did a certain activity, all of these type of things, right? And then track it for at least a month and see where your energy leaks, right? And then we can basically go from there.
Yes. And personally, I have something to confess, because it's a very good question that you brought up, like, asking where our energy went. And actually, you're right, like, a lot of us, we are not aware that we are feeling, burnout, because like you said, the line between stress and burnout, there's no line. It's like it's a range, that you slowly go into that area, and then it's like, a frog in a hot pot, and the temperature keeps rising. Because one thing I gotta confess is, last time, when I was working in Vincent years ago, actually, when I started working, when things get too stressed, and I wasn't aware that I couldn't handle the loads of tasks that I had to. And when I hit a certain threshold, I remember, my reaction or defensive mechanism is I would just stop communicating, which is really bad. I would let my phone just die and not on it again, and then people, and then I just like an ostrich, ducking its head into the ground, like just try to avoid everything, run away from everything, procrastinate with YouTube or any entertainment online, but just not communicating with my team or my colleagues or my boss, which is really unhealthy, and I really feel I'm not really proud of it. But yeah, that's a fact, and that was what happened to me. And it freaked the hell out of me when that happened. It's like, oh, why am I like that? But over the years, I've grown to understand more of that side of myself. So yeah, it's good that you brought this up. Yeah, about this burnout. And yeah, wasn't years until now that I realized that it was a burnout, in fact. Yeah.
But it's also a really common reaction or coping mechanism, as we would call it, right? It's a
Yeah.
very common coping mechanism that people just shut down
Yeah.
because they don't think they can talk to someone. We often feel alone in the ways we feel. We don't think someone else experiences the same or would understand us. And especially in this current like hustle culture, I don't believe that um, we should continue to spread this hustling and grinding and working hard for the money type of culture, because although it may has some good insights in various ways, but really what it does is it brings another level of societal pressure onto people who are like entrepreneurs or who are any type of high performers, high achieving people, right? Professionals, C-level executive. And the problem with that is that if it's pressure that comes from the outside, we often tend to take it on much faster than if it was something that we are that we maybe have just picked up from somewhere as a suggestion or something, if you understand what I mean. So like the peer pressure, the bias of having to do something because we're expected to do this on a bigger level. Like if, for example, your friend said, oh, you should do this, you would be like, oh, okay, but then probably forget about it if you actually don't think you should do this. But if you feel like on a much bigger level that society as a whole, like basically you're failing whole society if you don't behave like this, if you're not this, if you don't achieve this particular rank, if you don't have a big car, big house, big this, big that, if you're not making this much money, if you're not pulling all of these all-nighters and working 24/7 and bragging about it on social media, and then you're nobody. And as a man especially, because I work with men, like my clients are all men, and I have grown up with men everywhere. I have been working in men dominated areas all my life, and so I've seen this specifically for men as well, that you're then being called names and you're being made like a loser, or like you're being bullied for not being man enough. And like, what even does that mean? Like, what is even man enough? Like, if you prefer to sleep properly and be healthy and not work 24/7, that is the strangest thing that in my eyes has ever happened in history, that we are pressuring people for them to work themselves to death, only though they are pressing themselves into an identity that we want them to be. That's the weirdest paradox ever that I have seen in society ever. And it's only so that everyone else feels comfortable around them, instead of us taking care of men as well in the workspace or in like the entrepreneurship, whatever, and be like, hey, you should take a break now because you've been working for way too long. Your brain's surely not working anymore. You got to go to sleep. Like all of these type of things, because what happens is it has such a huge impact, not only on the men itself or the family around them, but on society as a whole. And what do we see in America? We see school shootings everywhere. We see suicide rates through the freaking roof. We see people who go literally insane. And it stems from where? From the pressure that we have everywhere around. And we talk about addiction to drugs, addiction to alcohol, addiction to sex and porn, but no one talks about how so many people are addicted to work as a coping mechanism for what's actually going on. And I want to break through all of these like taboos and barriers, because first of all, it's just not right, but it's killing us literally daily.
I agree with you on that. It's like I remember last time I have this thought. It's like, like if I say that, hey, I'm free this week, how to say it, like means that I'm not hardworking enough, right? I should say that, oh, like there's a subconscious programming that we should always say, "Oh, I'm busy this week," and that's a way that people or friends would just like, "Oh, okay, since you're busy, then I'm not gonna bother you." But if say you are free, then you're open for like why didn't you attend my thing? It's like it's normal to be busy all and stressed all the time. And if you're not stressed, means that you are not hardworking enough. I can see that what you are saying, that I can relate with that. But okay, yeah, now we have some awareness on this. All right, or like let's say like, how do you after noticing this, after realizing that, hey, we have this kind of subconscious mindset that is not serving us, after that, how do we transform it into serving us, like, or keep or improve our energy state?
So there was a lot of different ways to go to Rome. That means a lot of different ways how to increase your energy, right? And it really depends what is your state and what the awareness has brought to light. So I'll make an example. I think that's best to explain it. So, for example, one of my clients, he came to me and he wanted to be more productive. He wanted to get his work done faster. He worked a lot, especially on weekends too. And he just didn't see his family a lot. And, everything we just talked about. And he always felt like he didn't have any time for himself. He wouldn't even know when I asked him, like, what would you do in your free time? And he looked at me and like, what do you mean with free time? Like, there's no time at all that I, like, for years now. And I'm like, so what do you do with all of your time? And he's like, well, I wake up, then I have family chores, and then I work when they're not here. And when they come back, I have family chores, and then I go to bed. And then every day it's a repeat. It's like Groundhog Day. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Is there any day that would be different? He was like, no. And I basically, he would say that he kind of lost himself in like the whole entrepreneurship and being a family father, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, like we know this from mothers, and that's a totally fair conversation, but I don't see, although the conversation comes up now, but the conversation is not often around men. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying, like, I'm not a mother and I don't want to be one. And so I don't have any conversation to add on to this whole topic of how women need to be taken care of. And I don't think this conversation has been had enough. Like, we still don't take care of mothers. We still don't support them enough. Like, but this conversation is out there. But I look at men and I'm like, so when are you going to go and get a massage? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, why would I get a massage? And I'm like, well, because everyone needs to take care of themselves. We can't just, like, and it's not, here's the thing, I don't want to put this in like a political conversation. It's not a gender conversation. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with a gender role conversation. Mm-hmm. This has only to do with what have we done as a society to our own people? What have we done to society as a whole, to our own people? And we can say, like, it doesn't matter if it's man or woman, actually. It's like, but because I work with men, I talk about men. And the conversation is basically, how can we help them get back to life? Because right now they're just going through the motions, right? Yeah. And so with my client, although he thought he's going to have to learn time management and some leadership stuff, and I said, no, we're going to go back to the basics. Like, we have to create a foundation for yourself. Yeah. And I think we just don't learn that. We don't learn this in school. We don't learn it in kindergarten. We don't learn it in our jobs. And the foundation was really simple. They sound simple, but they're actually not easy. That's a tricky part. So we started, for example, like what I've done with him was this assessment first, right? So where does your energy leak? Which clients do you work with that drain your energy and suck everything out of you, basically. Where do you do chores that really are so draining for you? You maybe can switch with your wife. Maybe she likes to do them more, or like it's a conversation to have. Like, can you do this chore for me? I take this one from you. Like, it's a conversation. She can say no, but if you don't ask, you'll never have a chance to swap out this chore, right? And then there were things like we also found out that my client was neurodiverse, which means he had certain different troubles in doing certain things because with being neurodiverse, so in this case it was ADHD. And with ADHD, there's a lot of challenges to look at a task as a whole and get started, because a lot of times the brain cannot process how to start a task that is a whole task, because the brain cannot figure out what's the single steps of it. So what we've done a lot of times is just breaking down simple steps. Even how do you make a coffee? How do you go to a store and buy certain things? How do you buy the things on the list and not anything else? Like, legit, because the brain, and I don't mean every brain, but oftentimes an ADHD brain cannot process this information. And so these were things. We went really deep into creating a morning routine and a evening wind down routine for him that works for him. Not what's the 7 most famous habits for successful people, because successful people have way different days. They're already successful. They already have the money. They already have the time. So they have way different morning routines than someone like you or me or my client, you know? And we looked into nutrition. We looked into exercising. We looked into making time for things that will help him get back to himself and energize, and also remind him what's, and so one thing that I did and was actually one of my favorite was we made a list of things that he will have to go and try, like at least one thing on the list per week that could be fun. We didn't know if he thinks that's fun. We didn't know how it's going to turn out. Most of the things he hasn't tried, or not even tried since he was like younger. And I said, well, we're going to have to try, because we need to find at least 5 that you like doing, and you will keep doing them over and over again. And so it was a list of I think we had at least 20 things. And so one of them was going to massage. One of them was going to a pedicure. He liked the bows, which is great because pedicures are awesome. But not everyone likes them, But you need to try it. If you never try, you'll never know.
I never tried. Maybe I should. Yeah.
And so, every week, at the beginning of the week, we made an action plan for him together. So we would create a plan for him, what he was going to do in the week, what chores, what tasks in his business, the fun tasks to do, which times he would take off. We would actually create white space, meaning space in the calendar where he was not supposed to be doing anything, and just do nothing. Intentional do nothing time. Meditation? And then see what comes up.
Can he do meditation at the time, since not doing anything?
Well, you still do something then.
So not even meditation, just
I mean, meditation is still something that you do. So basically the practice there is to do nothing, to just get bored. Because when we're bored, that's when creativity kicks in. And he works in a creative space. So the practice was to get bored as long as you can, and then see when you get so frenzied that you have to follow your hunches and your instincts to do something. And sometimes he was like, you know what? I sat around for half an hour today. I'm like, amazing, good. That's exactly what we want. And sometimes he didn't make it longer than 5 minutes, and that's okay too, But then you would just, and the thing is, a lot of times people are afraid to do that because, first of all, they're afraid to waste time. It's the first thing. That's why would I waste my time? Well, if you think you're wasting your time with an exercise, like, because it's not an exercise, it's more like it's actually more helping you to get back to your creativity, to create white space. Like, and most of my clients have said that this is one of the most powerful things they've done, actually scheduling white space where there's nothing in the calendar. If you then decide to say, like, you know what, I'm going to read a book now, that's different. But in the beginning, it's legit to just sit down and do nothing,
Wow.
you know? And it's powerful because they don't have the space, meaning the room in your brain, the time space, the knowing that you don't have anything to do right now for an hour, to do nothing. And then, like, there's nothing for them to do, literally no chore, no nothing, no taking care of kids, no nothing. They don't have the room, the space for it, no the capacity. And once they do that, that's when the best ideas come. That's when they suddenly be like, oh my God, I need to write this down. And obviously, go write it down. Don't let this idea pass and like, no, go write it down. But then put the notebook away and sit there and you know, just look around. And the best thing is if you can do it outside, because in nature, you will have more creativity come up.
Yes. Yeah. That is a very interesting exercise, the white space exercise. First time I heard of it, and I feel like something that I should do. Honestly, like, when I hear about it just now, I was like, oh my God, that is a time that I'm going to, how to say, like, because I set a very elaborate schedule for myself, you know, and maybe I can follow it for 3 days, and after that I would mess it up by like taking over my supposedly meditation time and replace it with more work. You know, I feel like I need to rush some work. If I can get squeeze in some more progress, I will feel more successful. You know, but then I feel like, you know, after a while, you know, I would mess up my state of mind. I would mess up my sleep, right? And then, yeah, I think, like you said, it's very simple, but it's very hard to do. And now that I'm thinking about it, I can agree with you, because I feel like, you know, the white space sounds simple, but it takes the discipline and some willpower to keep it white for, you know, for as long as for long term. And yeah, that white space and creativity, yeah, I feel like that's a very important. I'm definitely gonna do it.
Yeah. And you know why you get off your meditation practice?
Why is that?
So, I mean, this is a generalization, so it's not for everyone, but in general, we have been conditioned to believe that doing something for ourselves is selfish, right? So meditation is for ourselves. So then it becomes selfish. And if we do something selfish, we feel like we're not a good person, or we feel guilty, or we feel ashamed, because now we're doing something for ourselves. Whereas, shouldn't we be doing something for other people? Shouldn't we be serving? We should be doing something that helps other people. But what we don't understand, and what's the paradox about it, where society just completely failed us and everyone literally, is that meditation practice, or anything like working out, drawing by numbers, painting, dancing, whatever the heck you do in order to feel better, is serving other people. If you don't do it, that's actually selfish, because you think, so let's just say you work on your business more than you do meditation or whatever. That is selfish, because you do work, and you just said it, right? Then you feel more successful. So that's the selfish part. So now you're like, oh, I shouldn't be doing meditation, because then I can feel more successful if I work more. But if you would meditate, if you would paint, if you go dancing, if you go running, if you take care of yourself, that's where it can show up as your best. That's where it can actually increase your energy and keep it high with small things every single day that are consistent but help you to feel your best self. Right?
Yes.
And so we twist that whole thing around, because that's a whole indoctrination we have been going through in the last like 100 years in society, that we shouldn't be taking care of yourself and of ourselves, when actually that's in fact the number one thing we need to start with in order to be able to serve other people better.
Yes, totally on it. Like, yeah, we gotta make sure that we are at the optimal state first, so that we can serve other people better. Yeah, and okay, just now you mentioned about the diet part, and when we were chatting, on Messenger, and I realized that you know quite a lot about the cordyceps, the tiger milk, and yeah, like I was like, oh my god, like oh, she knows all about this, and honestly, I have a lot to learn about these herbs, So yeah, talk about your preferred diet routine. Like, how do you manage your diet and your meals?
Man, I have gone through a whole transformation with this one. So for the people who don't know, I'm from Germany. So in Germany, we have very different food supplies than, for example, people from America or Asia. Our food is much more cleaner, because we have very much restrictions what goes into food, how you can grow food. Our like wheats and barley and all of the grains, they're much cleaner, because you can't just throw like a lot of pesticides onto it. I'm not saying that what's happened everywhere, but I know, for example, that for sure that the food quality is much higher in most European countries than what you would see, for example, in America. And you see this on people's health, on people's like obesity or non-obesity or whatnot, and also just on the regulations. Like the regulations that we have and the regulations that the FDA has in the US, for example, is a whole world in between. Like I would say almost like maybe that's just a personal guess, okay? That don't pin me down on the numbers. But my guess would be that over 80% of the American food wouldn't get through in like Germany, for example, where I'm from, because it's so over processed, it's so chemically made of, and like, so I traveled to the US in like 2018, and funny enough, I already had a fairly healthy diet. I would still eat pizza and everything, because pizza and pasta, like, it's just, I'm not Italian, but man, we're good friends. Like in Italy, Germany, although in football we are rivals, but it doesn't really matter. But man, the food, Italian food, who would say no to that? I don't know. If you say no to that, I don't know. But I went to the US in 2018, and I remember I was in California in San Diego, and I kid you not, I didn't find anything to eat for 5 days. So I decided I'm just going to go on a juice fast, because I was like, I don't know what to eat here. It's so over processed. I don't know what to eat. And my friends were like, oh, come on, you're being too much and oversensitive. I'm like, no, I legit just get, like, I tried this thing and I was just getting issues from it. I'm not going to go into it. It was not nice. I was like, I'm not going to eat this. And then I found a Whole Foods and was like, oh, finally, like fresh food. Well, that's what you thought. I bought a pineapple there. You know how much I like pineapples. I bought a pineapple for $17. Half a pineapple. Cut.
Oh.
I cried when I ate it. Not because it was so good. It was the worst fruit experience I ever had. It tasted like chemical water. I don't know if they made it in the lab or something. It was horrible. I'm sorry, Americans. Like, but if you never tried a pineapple outside of Whole Foods, you don't know what a pineapple tastes like. You have to come to like a tropical country to taste one.
Yeah.
And so by this time I was like, okay, this is not going to go anywhere. And so now I am on I don't want to call it a diet. I think diets are, honestly, I'm totally not into diets. I don't think they're helpful. Like all this like keto, paleo, carnivore,
Yeah.
kind of like do whatever
Okay.
you
Yeah.
want. It's totally your body, up to you. I don't think this is what we are here for, honestly. So what I have done is I am listening to my body. So I realized that there are certain foods that I'm reacting to that I actually get pain from,
Yeah.
and like nerve pain. And
Yes.
I just cut them straight out. And now I've actually recently, just now, I've done a food intolerance test, and I was right. So I'm allergic, for example, to gluten, which coming from Germany, it's a shame because we eat all of those breads and all of those uh, very much grains and everything. I'm also allergic, funny enough, to brewer's yeast, which is in beer. And so coming from Germany and having consumed probably tons of beer, I but I don't drink alcohol for 12 years now, so that's the thing. So 12 years ago was one of the biggest changes in my life. Well, in 2011. So that's 12 years. So 2011, I stopped drinking alcohol, any kind of alcohol. It not immediately stopped. I stopped smoking cigarettes. I went off caffeine completely, and I went off processed sugars all
No
at once.
sugars. No processed
Processed
sugars.
ones, refined sugars. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I fell back a few times on the sugar. I think that's a very underrated drug. It's one of the worst drugs, I think, the refined sugars.
It's
But
everywhere.
now I'm like, if I do consume sugars, it's like natural ones, like coconut sugar or date sugars.
Yeah.
Um, but to get to the herbs, so I have basically half of my kitchen is just herbs. I make herbal tea every day myself. I mix it together. I have a lot of those mushrooms that are non-hallucinogenic because I want to be sober. I live my life sober. I want to experience every little thing, even if it's very uncomfortable. And I don't appreciate anything that contorts my mind. And I let people do whatever they want to do. I don't have really a judgment against it. May it be plant medicine or may it be psychedelics or like you do whatever you want to do. But I don't want it, and I don't want the energy in my space, and I don't appreciate the vibrations of it. Mostly because I grew up on medication, like on really high level dangerous medication, like a lot of antibiotics, some steroids, some opioids that I was fed already when I was a little child because of the chronic illnesses I was born with. And I got rid of all of that because of how I changed my lifestyle and also my nutrition. And so a lot of it has to do that I reduced meat consumption to really maybe, well, right now I don't even eat meat really, to be honest. Sometimes I eat seafood, but rarely. And it has nothing to do with wanting to be vegan or not. It really has to do how my body reacts to it. And everyone needs to make their own decisions. Like eat meat if you like it, and if it's good for your body, eat it. And if not, don't eat it. But it's I feel like there's like how we treat animals, how they're being raised and fed, and also fed with antibiotics, and how they're slaughtered, how much meat we are producing and throwing away every single day in this world. It's just way out of proportion for what is actually necessary for people to be fed. And then if one country throws away 30 million tons of food every day, but then there are countries in the world that don't even have access to enough food. What is this, right?
Yeah, what's going on? Correct.
Yeah. And so I use certain mushrooms like reishi, lion's mane, cordyceps, specifically for my brain, for the nerves, for the nervous system, because those are the areas that I still need to heal quite a bit. And I use those. So lion's mane is really, really good. Cordyceps and reishi. Those are the three power mushrooms for the brain, the nervous system, and the neurological part of your body.
If you happen to come to Kuala Lumpur and come to my shop, well, yeah, I can give you a special discount on all these three.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I may come around.
So,
I may be in Penang in June. So
in June.
yeah.
Okay. Note it down.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. 瑞士还有 lion's mane and cordyceps. Yeah. Like since we were talking about mentioning about your neuro condition, could you share me about when you were 19, the experience of your 25 seconds clinically death experience? Like, how was it like, and how was the other side like? And after you came back, what mindset shift you experience?
So it was a very strange feeling, I guess. It's like so what happened is that by this time I was working already for like 6 years.
Yeah.
Full time. I started when I was 13, you read it out, right?
Yeah.
And I had like 3 jobs besides my school. And at this time I was actually, let me see, I was already in university. And I had 2 jobs beside university. So university in Germany is full time. So basically it's like 8 to 10 hours a day, depending on what course you take and whatnot. I had a second university course in the evenings, like 3 times a week. And then I had 2 jobs during the week that would add up to full-time hours. So both of these jobs together were at least like 20 hours a week, if not more, like often like more. I would often go work throughout the night. So I had a nighttime job and I had a full-time weekend job. And so on the weekend job, I also sometimes went to the night job. So sometimes I wouldn't sleep from like Thursday evening to Monday morning. So I cannot recommend this by the way. I'm not recommending this. Yeah, so that's why that's why I know very much about the hustle culture, because I was one of the hustlers out there. Like it's not that I'm just sitting here and be like, oh, I don't think Gary Vee should say. No, I was Gary Vee triple, like times 3. Like when he said like, oh, I was working for my dad's wine cellar, I was like, great, your dad had at least something to start with and you took over the business when it was at 3 million. My parents had basically nothing. And even lost their job. Like my dad lost his job. So that's a reason why I actually started working. And anyways, you didn't ask about that. You asked about the experience. So I came home from one of my jobs on the weekend and I was about to go to the next one. And I had about an hour in between. So because I didn't have a lot of money, but I lived alone already. I moved out when I was 17 from my parents.
Wow.
I usually would eat something like just pasta with whatever, or we call it Hawaiian toast. Like you have like toast with ham and cheese and pineapple on top. I'm sorry, Italians, I know you don't like that, but
pineapple.
It's a really cheap version of a Hawaiian pizza, but on toast, kind of like. And so I would eat stuff like that. Really, the worst things you can eat, the cheapest stuff, because that's all I had available. And so, but the moment I got home, I would have a migraine attack. So for people who don't know what migraines are, you can Google that, because it would take too long for me to say that. But migraines aren't like, one of the symptoms is headaches, but people say they're headaches. But I know from my experience that migraines are much more than headaches. So the headaches is one symptom. And so at this time in my life, I used to have also epileptic seizures during migraine attacks. So I wouldn't have epileptic seizures by themselves, but I would get them with migraine attacks together. So there is like a connection between migraines and epileptic seizures, and they would be able to trigger themselves. And I had this particular version of migraines that triggered epileptic seizures too. And for those who don't know, you can die of epileptic seizures. And by this time in my life, what they would say about seizures is you have like 12 minutes before you would get a brain damage. So 12 minutes if you're alone with a seizure and you have no ambulance around, whatever. And then it would be getting hard if you had a seizure longer than that. And so there are different types of seizures, by the way. That's why I say epileptic seizure. Anyways, so I got home and I get this migraine attack, and I didn't have any proper medication yet by this time, even though I had like painkillers and whatnot, but painkillers don't work for migraines, which is why you have them for so long. And I broke down in my bathroom because I started to get an epileptic seizure, but I didn't know by this time yet. So my bathroom was very small, and I broke down and I hit the back of my head on the bathtub. And because of that, I fell over really quickly down to the floor. And in Germany, we have like in between the doors, we have a little like wooden block on the floor to keep air out of rooms and not to be able, I don't know how this is called, a door swell or something like this. And I hit my forehead on this edge on the floor. Like it's a wooden block basically. And I hit it on the edge. And that caused the epileptic seizure to break out really badly. So I was on the floor and I started cramping, and I started basically losing control of myself, my body, which is what an epileptic seizure does. And the brain shut down, and I could feel myself not being able to control anything anymore. And the only thought came in my head, I was like, I never had this much pain or like seizures before. And I had a lot. I had thousands of migraine attacks before. I couldn't remember one of them that was this extent, this much pain, this much, like I can't even explain it. And all I thought was like, I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it. This is it. And so I was on the floor, and I saw my handbag in front of me, maybe like 3-4 meters away. And I was like, if I want to survive it, I need to get to my handbag and get my mobile phone. I need to call my parents. And so because I couldn't walk, I couldn't do nothing, I started pulling myself on the car bed with my arms. I pulled myself to this handbag, and I don't know how long it took. I just remember I got there and I was cramping up. Do you know how epileptic seizures work and how they look like on people?
I mean, I've saw it on TV, so but I've never seen it in real life. So basically, your brain shuts down. It's almost like an electricity outage in your brain, and then people cramp up. Like your hands look really Quasimodo. Frozen.
Frozen really. And you basically can barely breathe because your body basically cramps up so much that even your organs stop working properly because the cramps that the brain is causing basically, it's like an overstimulation in the brain. And this is basically like, imagine the cables you've seen the cables in Thailand on top of the road, right?
Oh, what a mess.
No, you didn't see that?
I saw it's a mess. Tangled
exactly.
out. Yeah.
Now imagine they all at once get electricity outage and then it just explode. That's basically kind of what happens in the brain. And so because of this overstimulation, the brain shuts down, and depending where the seizure is in the brain, it shuts down this type of like function in the body. So sometimes I couldn't speak anymore. Sometimes I wouldn't be able to move at all. Sometimes I wouldn't be able to swallow anymore. And that's why people swallow their tongue, because it just slips down, because all the muscles in the face would basically, they would slip down, whatnot. So it really depends in what area in the brain it is. And so I was lucky that I was able to crawl to this handbag. And so I had my parents on speed dial by this time, just because I had these seizures quite often. And I called them, and all I said was, you have to be here in 5 minutes or I'm going to die. Bring an ambulance. And they know that if I said bring an ambulance, it is like, because I hated ambulances and hospitals. So I would never ask for that, ever. Even if I was on the edge, Anyway, so that was the last thing I personally kind of consciously remember, because then I already faded out a little bit into like fainting, like losing my consciousness in and out. Like I tried to stay awake as much as I could, because I knew like once I lose my consciousness, I'm gone. Like I knew that this attack was my end. If they are not going to make it on time, I'll be dead by the time they arrive. And so they had the key to my apartment. So they came in, ran in, and I was in the living room somewhere. And I just hear my mother basically yell at me. She's like, she wasn't very, very conscious about all of the, noise sensitivity and everything.
Oh.
We're here. The ambulance is coming. They're downstairs. And when I heard the ambulance is downstairs, that's when my body just gave in. I just completely, that was kind of my sign. I was like, I'm done. And so in this moment, everything went black. And I don't know, have you ever fainted, Siler?
No, I don't think so.
No? Wow,
Fainted?
that's cool.
Fainted, like
lose your consciousness? Like go dizzy and then knock out? No?
Well, definitely like when I go for meditation class in the beginning, and I would fall asleep in the meditation. So it's just like, I just lose my consciousness naturally without noticing. So, oh my God, like I was asleep the whole time. Like, but it's not like fainted because of I'm fortunate enough to not have experienced a fainting because of an accident.
Yeah.
But
well, falling asleep is not like losing consciousness, because you're still conscious in your sleep. You just like, you just don't know that you're conscious, which is a different version of comfort. But you're still there.
Yeah. Like
which is why we dream and all those kind of things.
Yeah. Correct,
but anyways.
Right,
Okay. So basically what happens when you faint. So fainting is losing consciousness. You go unconscious, basically. That means that all of your unnecessary functions in the body just stop. And all the body pertains is the breathing and the heart beating. And basically like the whatever else is swallowing kind of things. But you are out. And you're like, so when that happens, usually it would go black, but when it goes black, you would still see like colors and shapes and kind of things. And that's a very short moment, because usually when you go unconscious, and let's just say you're dehydrated and that's why you faint or something, right? You usually faint for a very short amount of time. Like usually it's 5 seconds or something. You usually, it's like a reset button that your body pushes. But what happens is, and that's only for people who do that a lot. Like I fainted so many times, I know the difference. That's why I'm explaining that. So you close your eyes and you still, not as if you close your eyes now, you're seeing still like some type of like maybe shapes or forms and colors, right?
Correct. Like the orange skin color through my eyelids.
Right.
Because,
Yeah. So when I blacked out that day, it went just black, blackety black. There was, it was the blackest black I've ever experienced. And this was just, and it was immediately like, there was nothing. It was pure nothingness. And it was, I don't know how to explain it. That's all I have for you. So it's just nothingness. And then suddenly everything went bright. Like this really, I can actually show you because I have to actually, I shouldn't have put this light on, but basically it's this really bright light. Like these type of, oh shit, sorry, white light. I'm sorry, Latte. I just threw down something. That's all right. I just dropped it. I'm so sorry, Latte. And
es tut mir leid, Latte.
oh, yeah, tut mir so leid. He doesn't speak German. And so this really bright white light, right? That is like, you know it from hospitals, like this extreme white light. So I woke up to this and I was like, ugh, there's like, where's the light coming from? Because it was not my living room. And so I looked around and I was like, oh, look at me down there. Well, my parents are holding my hands and the ambulance is taking care of me. Well, that's great. And then I was like, well, wait, why am I down there? But I'm looking at myself like, what's happening? And so there was like this really strange experience of me, like my soul, my soul experiencing this outside of my body scenario. My body still being there. They're putting needles in my arms. They're pumping medication into my blood. They're seemingly talking to me, but I do not hear a word. I legit, it's silent. There's nothing but what I see. And then I try to feel myself, like, you know, when you sit now, you can feel like, so I feel my shoulders, they're heavy, and I sit on my butt, I can feel that, you know, when I wiggle around. You feel, again, nothing, zero. It's light. It's like there is nothing because you're not in your body, right? You have no shell anymore. And so as I was floating there as my soul and looking down there was this moment, it's like, you know what? They're doing their things there. They're doing it. I can move on. And then I turned around and this whole space opened up. And mind you, I thought I float in the upper right-hand corner of my room. But this whole space opened up of this incredible white light. And it just drew me in. Like, I don't know, it was just like, I kind of floated towards it. And it went faster and faster. And then suddenly a memory popped up. And it was how my granddad was berating me and talking down on me and be the person who he is, you know, honestly, and just bullying me and gaslighting. Like, it's just as it was. And I was like, wow, okay. Whew, that was nice. And I moved on, and the next memory come up, and it was a fight with my ex-boyfriend, and I had a rose and I smashed it all with the front of his car, and I'm like, wow, okay, that was okay. And I kind of waited for the good memories to come, you know? I was like, aren't you living your good life when you're like in this tunnel kind of thing? It wasn't a tunnel for me, it was just a big white space. And suddenly it picked up the pace. Like I was going towards this bright light further and further and faster and faster. And it was like, wow, okay. And I realized, wow, when I hit the light, it's going to be it. That's it. That's the end.
Yeah.
And it was like a really weird thing because even though I realized I was out of body, and I don't think that's a thing that you actually realize. It's not like, oh, I'm out of body, I'm going to die now. That's not even it. Like, but it was a soul journey, like kind of like of, I'm leaving my body behind, I'm going through these memories, and suddenly it was like, wait a second, this white light means that's it, that's the end of my life. And I wasn't ready. Like I don't think that was my time, obviously, because I'm still here. And I turned around and in my head I said, no, this is not going to be it. And it felt like, obviously, didn't have a body. So it felt somewhat like I would turn around, like basically like making the decision, like this is not going to be it. And like swimming against the current, like suddenly moving away from this light felt so difficult, as if I was swimming in a river against the current, right? It felt so difficult. It felt like as if that was the hardest thing I would ever do in my life. And then in one moment, I had this extremely painful, strong, like smash on my chest, as if someone with a huge sledgehammer would ram this all over my body. And that was my first heartbeat. And I remember it like today. It was legit as if someone would jump on me, or like a brick would drop from a skyscraper onto me. It was super painful. It was super strong. And it was because my heart started beating again. And I would wake up and suddenly my room was so bright. And I didn't have bright lights like this, but it felt like super bright, super overstimulating. I had like, I don't know how many ambulance people around me, and they were all like, blah, 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 blah. My mom like, are you okay? Are you okay? And it was so much that I got so overstimulated, I just fainted again. But this time I just fainted. I didn't actually die again. I just knocked out into unconsciousness. And this time it was just black with all of the colors again. And I was like, oh, no. So my body pushed the reset button one more time.
Wow.
And then I woke up, and I just remember I had 3 different IVs, like the needles that they put inside to pump medication or not. Yeah, so the IVs, I had 1 in each hand and 1 in my elbow. And I looked at it, I was like, what are you pumping into me? And like, it was a hell of a mix of medication. And I think, I don't know if I said it, but I think the first thing I thought was like, shit, I have to go to work. Because I missed that job, right? Like, but then the next thing I thought was like, wait a second. Why is that even the first thing I care? Like, and mind you, the ambulance didn't know that I died. My parents didn't know that I died while they were sitting next to me. No one knew. It was approved basically the next day by my neurologist and by my cardiologist that this happened. And also, obviously a therapist. We went through this whole thing, and I told him what happened, and they were like, oh, clearly out of body experience. And I actually got a little brain damage from it, which sounds worse than it actually is. It just was a chemical change in my brain that they call brain damage. And it took about like 2-3 years for me to find out, actually a lot longer. The impact was immediate, but it took me longer to find out what it was, what was the impact of it. But anyway, so then the next question I was thinking about was like, wow, those memories though that came up, they were really like, is this all I got from my life? Is this all I got? Like, I must have lived a really shitty life. If all I got was my grandfather bullying the heck out of me and me fighting with my ex-boyfriend. If that's all I got as the last memories, I haven't even tried to live up to my full potential. I have only lived for other people. I have only lived in rebellion to what other people told me to do or not to do. And I haven't even tried living my own life, and I got to change this. And that's what I've done immediately. I started traveling only half a year later and moved to London, and I changed my whole life ever since.
Wow. Wow. Wow, what an experience. Wow, and that is one of the vivid version I've heard in person. Like, the all the wow, like all the lights, all the details, like, well, that must mean something. And actually it makes me rethink that, when you share the part where you have that flashback of your life, and when if I were to be at that moment and I only see the bad ones, that would really make me seriously need to rethink my life. That, how do I make sure that I have more good ones when I'm at a flashback? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, legit, I was like, the next time I die,
Yeah.
I wanna see a party. Like, I wanna see all the colors. I wanna see all the, like, I wanna see the world. And funny enough, now I died again. I died again last year, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's so funny because, well, I had a actually, it's really funny because exactly a year ago today, I went to hospital and find out that my lung exploded and collapsed and pushed against my heart, and that it was already for 7 days, and that they said I should have been dead by now, and it's impossible to survive that for so long. I said, like, well, you don't know me, my friend. But it turned out that I had to have like 2 small and then 1 major lung surgery. And during the major lung surgery, I had another out-of-body experience. So and the thing is that sometimes they don't register it as a clinical death, because because you're basically in like a fake coma when you're under general anesthesia.
Yeah.
And it's fairly common that people can have the heartbeat stop for like a few seconds, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're clinically dead or that they're out of body, whatever. It just means the heart stops for a few seconds and then it comes back. Like it's kind of like so it can happen during big surgeries like this. At least that's what I've been told, because I asked my anesthetist afterwards if there was anything during the surgery that that was like uncommon, and no one really. And honestly, I didn't get a lot of information anyways, and like the report wasn't very good. So I feel like there's a little bit of lack of information. But what he did said was that they needed to induce more anesthesia because they planned for a 2-hour surgery, but it turned into a 6-hour surgery.
My God.
And so anyways, I had this second out of body experience. So I know that I had another, whether it was a clinical death or not, that's not the point, but I was out of body, and it was during the surgery, because I remember basically waking up as in like my soul went out of body during the surgery, because I saw the theater lights and I went in through the theater lights out into a different dimension. And now the thing is, like, people could say like, oh, but you've seen the theater lights and everything before. And I was like, no, because they induce you with anesthesia in a different room before you are being brought into the operation theater, which is, that's how they call the operation room theater, right? So I haven't actually seen the operation theater inside. when I was awake.
Yeah.
But I can explain everything to you because when I left my body, I've basically looked around and I've seen everything, and I went into the operation theater lights to the other dimension, which is like a little crazy.
That's
But
cool.
yeah, but this time I didn't have any, like this time was a whole different experience. And the reason why I know I wasn't supposed to be dying this time either was I didn't have any life memories flashed up, nothing. I just met this is going to sound so strange. I just met a group of spiritual guides who were giving me the reason for what is happening with me, why I was surviving this, and basically gave me kind of a part of my life purpose and why I need to continue the work that I do, but also in different ways, and be more of who I am in this world. And then they sent me back and they're like, ciao, have a good one.
Ciao.
Kind of.
So
that's not what they said, but
I thought they were Italians. Ciao.
No.
I mean, do you remember? I mean, a bit off topic, but do you remember how they look like? Like do they have a
I remember everything as if it was yesterday. I don't think you will ever forget these type of things.
I mean, wow, like, I mean, are they like a human figure or like, I don't know, just some ghostly shape or something?
No, so not at all human, not at all. Like it was, so basically whom I met was the Golden Council of Light. And for me, I think it like different people have different experiences. So I think they can show up in different ways. But for me, it looked like a half moon, a half circle of flames. And those flames were different shades of white and gold and yellowish, but they would go from the brightest in the middle to a gold shade on the outer side. And those flames they were all the same height, and it was a very tall flame shape, more so than not white, it was more tall. That makes sense? And they were all kind of fading into each other as well. And it's also not that they were speaking or something. It's just like I was going in there, and basically because it was a half circle, I was standing right in the middle of it. And the knowledge I was supposed to receive was transmitted as a knowing. Like it was just, it's almost like you stand there and then I don't even know how to explain it because it's so otherworldly. I was not even standing there because I didn't have a body. So I was also just one of those flames, kind of, like I just, my soul was there. And it was almost like you just, it's more like an intuition coming to you. That's the best I can explain it. So you are there and suddenly you have this intuition and this knowledge of something that you didn't know before. And it's so true because that's how it feels. It feels so true for you. And then I went back into my body. And yeah.
Wow. When I hear you talk about this, I have goosebumps all over me. It's like I didn't expect to learn about this like today. Wow.
It's actually interesting because it's the first time ever I talk about this publicly. I have not shared this at all anywhere. Like I had talked about this with like maybe 2-3 people. But I haven't this particular experience, the first one, yes, I talk about this, but this particular experience, because it's a very different experience, and I know that many people who go through out of body experiences experience similar versions of this. Like they sometimes they meet God, whatever God means to someone. They meet spiritual guides, or they're being picked up by an angel, for example, an archangel or something. Like there are so many different spiritual versions of this.
Yeah.
But because I think like the first time when I died, I haven't had any sense of spirituality really. I mean, maybe, but not consciously, you know what I mean? I also didn't have any faith anymore. I left the religion that I grew up with pretty early because I just didn't make any sense of it. It didn't make sense to me. And so I feel like that this was somewhat also an initiation, if that makes sense. And it, for people who are not spiritual, it probably sounds like a lot of BS.
No.
And that's totally fine. If you don't believe in that, it's totally fine. But this is what happened, and I cannot change what happened. And I'm not going to make things up, or I'm not going to create anything that hasn't been my experience. And sometimes our minds, especially, they want to make things very logical, and they want to push all of these other dimensional or over-dimensional or otherworldly or whatever experiences or possibilities away, because it just doesn't make sense to us. And it took me a long while too to just accept that I'm a person who sometimes has experiences that just don't fit into this world. And it is what it is. I cannot control it, honestly. I can't call on it. It just, you know, it is what it is. And I want to appreciate it, and I want to make sure that I am using it for the best possible outcome, basically, for everyone involved.
I mean, well, personally, this is a subject that's I'm very curious about, honestly. And yeah, I mean, because I'm personally, I'm very into yoga, you know, and I listen to Saikuru, and also I'm also very yeah. And then he did mention, oh yeah, man, that guy is funny, and he just makes things sound so simple. And he did mention about his wife. Yeah, very practical. Yes, yeah. And he mentioned about his wife, you know, how she passed, you know, and also mentioned about other yogis, like master yogis, how they just choose to leave their body. And it's not the first time I heard. I also heard it in the Chinese culture, Qigong. Like there's 102 years old Qigong master. The way he passed, he just somehow, you know, arranged everything, and they said that, oh, okay, so everything is arranged, and then he just took a nap and peacefully never woke up, you know. So all this is a very interesting thing to me. Like I'm very curious. Yeah, but it's not, honestly, you know, Dankeschön for sharing these two very magical, very otherworldly experience with me. It really blew my mind, honestly. And yeah, like it's not every day. It's not like any other day I can just interview someone who just died twice, so and then talk about. Yeah, like I'm so glad I have you today as a guest, you know, and I think
I keep making jokes about third time is a charm.
No.
But I mean it actually for my life, right? Because that's basically the third chance I'm getting at life now, right?
Yeah.
So when I say like third time is a charm, everyone thinks like, oh my God, don't say that. Like, you know, like the third time you're dying, like you're dying for real. I'm like, well, that's also what I hope for. I mean, I'm not wanting it now, but I hope like at some point, like that's what it is, because that's life, right? But what I actually
120 years old. Like, and maybe when you're 120 years old, yeah, and you're healthy and strong.
That's 4 times. That's still almost 4 times living of what I had. Oh no, I'm okay with like 85 or 90.
90.
Like
90 is good.
I mean, I don't know, to be honest, what it is to be that old, but when I look at the world right now, I'm like, do I want to go through a lot of more of this kind of crap? And I'm like, maybe not. Maybe not.
Maybe.
I'm good with with what I know for now, and like looking at if I die with 85 or 86, I still have 50 years to go. That's still a long time to go. You know what can happen in 50 years?
A lot. But
Yeah. I'm 36 and I went through all of this already. Like, I don't know what 50 years for me are still gonna be like, you know? So I'm like, I don't know. Do I have to be 120? I don't think so.
Well, and anyways, I just wish you, a long life, and then until the end of your life, you are still walking with your own 2 feet without any support and have the fun of
yeah.
life. Yeah, and feeling strong and
That's
healthy.
the one thing that is going to be important, that I will be able to live life for the rest of my life. I don't want to be on like life support in whatever way that means,
No.
because but yeah. But one thing I want to say about like Sadhguru and the ways that they leave their body, I do feel, and maybe that's just my perspective, but I do feel there's a difference about leaving your body like mentally and actually leaving it physically. So what I mean by that is what yogis do, for example, or what happens during like plant medicine ceremonies or whatever. I feel like it's more a way of people mentally leaving their bodies, if that makes sense. Like they go in a state of so deep meditation that they are basically able with their soul to leave the body. But the body still functions. The body doesn't stop functioning. You're so part of you is still in there. Because there's still consciousness in the body. Right? And that's a difference from the body actually being dead. And you leaving the body and then coming back and reviving the body.
I see.
It's a difference. It's definitely a difference, and I feel like the experience is also a different one. Because if you leave your body on purpose with your soul and basically on an astral body level, it's almost like a controlled way of doing that. When your body dies and your soul is basically like pushed out, there's nothing that you control of it. And you hear that with like accidents and with whatnot all the time. And it's a very different experience.
I mean, I did hear about stories about how the yogis have the skill to, like you said, have the out of body experience, but then they also need someone to look after their body, because in case their soul comes back and then the body is stolen away or moved away, they wouldn't be able to go back to their body. And that's something I heard about. But that this is a very wild story, and I hope not everyone have to find their life purpose with this method. I believe there's other safer way to do so. It's and I feel like I should retitle my podcast for this episode, because this is far more interesting than just raising your energy levels. I think we leave that, the 5 capacity question for another time, for another podcast. Yeah, that's very cool. Very, very cool stuff. Wow. Anyway, Monique, thanks for your very intimate and very magical sharing tonight.
Mm,
Dankeschön, and
thank you.
yeah, and okay. So to close this off, where can our audience find you? What's the best method to approach to find you?
So the best way to find me is on my
Yeah,
website,
mm,
thetimealchemist.co. Or on
timealchemist.co.
Facebook, just my
Mm,
full name, Monique Lindner.
mm,
But if you search for the Time Alchemist, you find my public profile as well, the yellow
mm,
one.
the
Yeah,
timealchemist.co. I'll leave that
yeah.
link in the description. Wow,
Thank
Monique.
you.
Wow, today's sharing it's wow. Literally mind blowing. I mean, and wow, I feel like I have a lot more questions to ask you after, but I just haven't been able to put into words about this. But anyway,
Feel free to send them over.
yes. But I mean, anyways, yeah, you mentioned about third time the charm. I hope this is the longest you have the longest. You live as long as you want and as strong as you want. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's really a pleasure, an honor to meet and listen to your experience. Like I said, not many times I heard about somebody who has this experience twice, and yeah. So ja, haben eine guten Nacht. Haben eine gute Nacht.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a
Dankeschön.
nice evening. Dankeschön. Dankeschön. Anyway, Monique, thanks for. I'm really glad to have you tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, be sure to find Monique at the timealchemist.co and her, that is main website, or your Facebook, Monique Lindner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where you'll find her. If you have similar experience, or if you connect with this, and when interested to find out more about Monique, please approach her. It's wonderful sharing tonight. Yeah, and that's it. Okay, I'll end the recording here. All right.